Hey, how's it going? Hope you're well. In this video, I'm going to show you how to change the air shaft in your Rockshox Fork. Now I'm going to be changing the travel on the Rockshox Zeb in this Trek rail, but the principle is virtually identical in most of the forks that are out on the market. There are some basic things that you're going to need. The air shaft itself, this will actually change the amount of travel on the fork. Some SRAM dynamic grease or butter. This is to help lubricate the fork. And some suspension oil. Now, it is usually specific to the fork. So the Zeb uses 0 to 30. The viscosity is slightly different on some forks, but I'll link in the description the SRAM documentation so you can see which fork oil you need. And then you're going to need some tools. So some kind of hammer, rubber or plastic, some basic tools, some Allen keys in, I think it's 2.5mm and a 5mm that you'll need. Some kind of dowel that's non-metallic. This is going to be what I'm going to apply the grease to, and that will lube the inside of the fork stanchion. Ideally a plastic one. I don't have a plastic one, I've got this wooden one. It's nice and smooth, there's no bits of wood gonna come off there. So that's gonna go into the fork stanchion and actually help me apply some of that butter to the inside of the fork tube. And then a couple of other basic things, some circlips, because there is a circlip on there that we'll need to remove. Screwdriver, a cassette tool, which actually is the same as the air shaft remover. So if you've ever changed your cassette, or change tokens in your fork, you're going to have one of these. If not, they're super cheap. This is by a brand called Ice Tools. It works really well. And I've just got a little bit of rubbing alcohol here and some classic workshop blue towel just to keep everything clean. That's all you need. Pretty basic stuff. It is actually a really quick and really easy job. And it's a good way of experimenting. And actually, one of the things that I really love about the Rockshox forks is that, first of all, they're upgradable, so you can change the dampers and the air shafts around, and it is super easy. So if you've got a regular Zeb or a regular Lyrik, not the ultimate ones, you can buy the upgrade kits, and they're pretty reasonable, and you can change them to like their ultimate versions. So Rockshox documentation is really great online. It's really easy to see. They've got some good stuff out there. So yeah, let's go ahead, get it swapped out, and I'll show you how it's done. All right, so I'm doing it on my Trek rail. It is in a stand, but it's quite a bit heavier than a regular bike, depending on the type of stand that you've got. Some of them don't support e-bikes at certain angles, and you'll see when I'm doing this, I'm gonna maneuver the bike around on the stand a little bit so I can get access to the parts that I need to adjust and remove. Now, just be careful if you're putting a heavy e-bike in a stand and moving it around. This park tool that I'm using is the PRS25, and it's pretty decent, but even this struggles at getting the bike at a different angle, like tipping it backwards because of the weight. So what I'm gonna do, just to make it a little bit easier, is I'm gonna take the battery out of the bike. So I'm gonna take the front wheel out, take the brake caliper off just to get everything out of the way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is remove all of the air pressure from the fork. The reason is it's a pressurized system. When we take these lowers off, if there's still air pressure in there, they're going to fly off, so we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to remove everything. Some people like to record what's in there already, and on the rebound adjuster as well, how many clicks you've got on the bottom, just for like if you're working in a bike shop, you kind of want to put it like the customer had it before, or if you're just doing it for yourself, it's easier to set back up and just get back to that kind of point that you had it. So for me and these Zebs, that's 75 PSI according to this pressure gauge. So that's what I'll set it back up with. I'm just going to count the amount of rebound clicks that I've got on there as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 clicks of rebound. So when I'm setting it back up, I can get the same pressure as a baseline figure for setting it up of 75 PSI and 7 clicks from fully closed of rebound. So now I'm going to take all of the air pressure out of the fork. Whoop. There you go. I'm going to remove the lowers in a sec, but I've just got this little pot just to catch the oil. Preferably I'd have a bigger one, but it's only a small one. There's hardly any oil in these. It's not like you're changing the oil on a car. So it's only like a small amount, but it's still good to be able to catch it all before it drips everywhere. Next up, I'm going to take off this rebound adjuster. There he goes. Pop him on there. I'm going to loosen these bolts under here, and basically the lowers are attached to the uppers with these bolts. We're going to take these off a few turns, just loosen them a few turns, and then I'm going to kind of hit them with a mallet to separate the lower and the upper. It does feel a little bit weird, like hammering the bottom of your forks, but that's how you're going to separate them, and that's basically going to get the lowers to be able to come off. So these two bolts here, I'm going to loosen slightly. This is when some oil will probably drip out. So just like 3 full turns, just to loosen them. And then this is when you're gonna look like a madman because you're gonna be smashing the forks with a hammer. But basically it's just to dislodge the lower from the upper. You can see it move there, so that's gone. There you go. There goes the oil. Now I'm going to completely just remove these bolts. Probably you might want to wear gloves for this bit. I'm really bad, and I don't always wear gloves, but you know, we're talking oil and hands and skin. So right, now the bolts are out, I can just pull these lowers down. If when you're trying to remove the lowers, it feels like there's loads of pressure still in the forks and it doesn't slide down super smooth, that's because the lowers are not separated yet from the upper. So I've had it before where I've hammered it and thought they'd separated, some oil's poured out, and I've pulled it and there's been loads and loads of pressure. If you do get that, you just need to pop the bolt back in, give it a hammer. You'll know when it's released because oil will come out and then there'll be like no pressure on the lowers. So you can see here, I can just pull them down super easy. You don't want to get it to the point where you're like pulling on all that pressure and it just kind of, well, you won't be able to get it off basically. I'm just going to pull the lowers down gently. There we go. Okay, pop the lowers in a safe place. So you can see on the right-hand side, this is the damper, and the actual air shaft is on the left-hand side. So this is what we're going to be removing and replacing. If you are interested, I'm actually going to go back down to a 160 on the Zeb, on the rail. I find that that's the stock fork that it comes with. I did try the 170, but I'm going to take it back down to 160. So this air shaft is just going to be replaced with a 160 from the 170 that it's on now. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the air shaft out. And to do that, grab your cassette tool. There you go, top cap. I've been using 1 token in this fork. I'm just going to rotate the bike around because I need to remove a circlip from the bottom. So you want some circlip pliers that actually pinch inwards. There you go. One really important point is when you're putting it back, it's got 2 edges to it. It's got like a rounded edge and a sharp edge. You want to make sure you're putting it back in the exact right way with the sharp edge pointing downwards on the bottom of the fork and the curved edge on the top. So it's really critical. Now we're actually going to take out the air shaft. And to do that, I'm going to put the bolt back in and pull it down, get a paper towel, and I'm just going to pull it out, straight out. There we go. So there it is. just going to take this bolt off, put it back in my tray, and there it is, 170mm air shaft and the 160, fresh 160 out the pack. So actually this fork is fairly new, but I'm still going to clean it inside, just so it's got all kind of fresh grease in there. So I'm going to grab my dowel, and I'm just going to have a look up there. Looks super clean in there. It is quite new. Pop a bit of paper towel up there and just give it a nice clean. For this fork, I'm actually going to put in SRAM's dynamic seal grease. Now, not all forks use this. It's very similar stuff, to be honest with you, but some use the actual SRAM butter. The Zeb is compatible with this dynamic seal grease. Don't want to cake the fork in this grease. It's just kind of pre-greasing it, basically. You're not putting like a ton in. SRAM recommend like 150 mil on the dowel, just to get enough in there. There you go. All right, looking good. And with the air shaft, you're just going to pop a bit of grease on here. Again, doesn't need to be absolutely caked in it. Then we're going to carefully pop it back in, nice and gently. And then just want to get the bottom cap slightly in, and then the circlip is going to go back on there. So now the circlip's going to go back in. We want to make sure that it is going in the right way. So the sharp edge, you can just feel there's a sharp edge on the outside. There you go, it's fully in now, installed the right way round. And that's the air shaft basically replaced, and we've got the 160 in. I'm just going to clean the uppers now. I put a tiny bit of cleaning fluid, just a bit of rubbing alcohol on those, just to get any crap off of it, but it looks super nice and clean now. There you go. And now let's pull the bike back down. Pop a bit of this grease just around the top cap. All right, top cap is installed. So now we're actually going to put the lowers back on. So I'm just going to pop a bit of the SRAM grease just around here. Again, you don't need absolutely loads. There we go, just going to make sure these are the same kind of height, and then just gently pop the lowers back on. Should slide on nice and smooth. Now's the part when we're going to turn the bike around, and then we're going to put the oil in the damper side and the air shaft side, but just double check the amount of oil that your bike takes, because they are all slightly different. The easy thing with the Zeb is it's 20mm each side. Now, make sure when you're looking through that the bolts are not touching the bottom, because you want space for oil to go in. I've actually got the air spring side, there's no bolt touching. On this side there is. And pull it back a little bit. There you go. So there's space for the oil to go in now. This one actually takes 20mm in both damper side and air shaft side. So SRAM are like, definitely don't overfill it. So I'm gonna trust what they say. So I'm gonna pop 20mm in this side. There he goes, 20mm in there, 20mm in the other side. Done with the oil, all good. And I'm just going to push this down so I can see the bolts. There we go. And we're just going to bolt them up. So and then on the damper side, this is the rebound adjuster nut. And I'll torque these up to the correct value. So this is very specific, 7.3 Newton meters, according to SRAM's technical documentation. One of the most satisfying things you can do when you're working on a bike. So I'm going to get the torque wrench to 7.3 and then get these torqued up. There you go, get that satisfying little click through your torque wrench. Nice. So I'm going to pop the rebound adjuster, and there is a little set screw just on there. So when that goes in, we just tighten them up just to lock that on there. There you go, you can hear that's actuating now. And now, basically, let's put the bike back together. So get the oil out the way. Bring it down. Now, before I put the bike together, I'm just going to give everything a nice clean, just to get all the grease, any oil residue, just off the fork, the uppers and the lowers. Brake caliper's going to go back on. Perfect. Get the air cap on. And finally, the brake guide. So there you go. One Rockshox air shaft removal installation. Super easy, really. It's just one of those kind of jobs that it's quite nice doing it yourself. And I kind of like experimenting and fiddling around. So if you're up for a little DIY job, it's pretty straightforward. It is pretty simple. Easy to do, and that probably took, I don't know, half an hour maybe, and that's me kind of getting the cameras and all that kind of stuff sorted, so not too much of a bad DIY job. There is also the ability to service the fork as well. There's like a 50-hour service that I will be coming up to quite shortly. Similar kind of process. I'm going to make another video on that to show you how to service your fork as well.